We're going like this way, because this way, or this way. Good evening and welcome to CARE's first Community Education Forum since September of 2019. So thank you for coming out tonight. We've not done this in a long time, but we think it's really a valuable service to provide education and information to families about our issues. A couple of housekeeping things is that restrooms, if you go out the back doors, and then as soon as you exit this theater, just turn right and they'll be on your left. And I think most of you found the coffee, that you want the coffee. So CARE Dallas was established in the early 80s by a group of parents in this neighborhood who were concerned about the underage drinking. And they came together and actually just formed like a coalition of concerned parents and educators. And over the years, it has grown and grown and grown. And we went to the YMCA and office there for a while. We were a program of the Y. And then in 2012, our board decided to create the nonprofit status of the IRS. And so since then, we've been a standalone nonprofit. And we basically do three things. We provide education to students in schools from first grade all the way through 12th. We do intervention for students who have found themselves in a situation where there's something illegal going on, like underage drinking or consumption. And so we provide education programs for those students, including students from SMU or local colleges who are in trouble and someone thinks they need some additional education. And then one of the most important things that CARE does that a lot of people really don't know about is that we serve as a resource for families who have a loved one who is seeking treatment for alcoholism or any kind of substance use disorder. And you know, if you start to look for a treatment center, it's going to be overwhelming. If you're already concerned about someone you love that's abusing drugs and alcohol, we know that if you Google treatment centers, it's really overwhelming. There are so many, and there's so many different types. How do you discern what's a good one and what's a not so good one? And so families will come to us, and we learn about them and their resources and their needs, and we find out about their insurance, and we find out a little bit about the person that needs help. And then we just kind of help navigate them through the waters of finding the truly appropriate treatment center that meets their loved one's needs. It could be a women's-only treatment center, men's-only, faith-based, all kinds of treatment centers located all over the country. And so we have a lot of people find help for addiction, and then we try to help the person who made that initial phone call to express their need for help. We try to find that person some help and support because we know that addiction affects the entire family. So CARE is so pleased to be here to be able to offer this wonderful program for you tonight. Just want to make a quick announcement on the table out there. We've already made a lot of headway with planning our 2022 breakfast. It will be September the 19th at the Dallas Country Club, and you'll be receiving more information about that. We just want to get the news out. Well, enough about this. I want to introduce you to a dear friend of CARE's and someone who has worked tirelessly and endlessly helping people find answers and resources to meet their needs. So Susa'n Hoemke has a passion to help others because she clearly understands the challenges that families face when a loved one is struggling with a substance use disorder. And she's going to talk to you about that and about her story from the perspective of a mom who went through that very thing and the difficulties that she and her family faced as they went through this, and then how after everything settled, she has risen up and decided that this is kind of her mission and her passion in life. She spoke at the CARE breakfast last fall. She spoke numerous times at the high school and really all over East Texas and with some businesses, and she's really just finding her place in this world of young people who are overusing drugs and alcohol and doing everything she can do to help. So I will turn this over to Susa'n. Susa'n Hoemke.
Hello, I'm so glad all of you are here. I appreciate you being interested. And one thing that I definitely work with people who have families that are struggling with substance use disorder in their home. But a big part of my focus is really on prevention. I want to get into the elementary schools. I want to educate elementary parents, the middle school parents. It is a lot harder to tackle a problem that is already happening when someone's in high school and they begin struggling with substances, or they're just going out with friends and they're starting to test the waters. So a big part of what I do is prevention, and I'll talk about that towards the end. I have a program that I'll share with you. But what I want to do is I want to take you on this journey with me. And what did I find? What did I see? What was it like for my other kids growing up in a home with their oldest brother struggling with substance use disorder, addiction? So I'm going to try to give you as much information as I can and take you on that journey with me. Purpose for today: drug education awareness as prevention. Learn, understand, and make a plan as a family. Through discussion, listen, share, and hear each other. You're going to hear me talk a lot about this being a family issue, about planning ahead, about being prepared. These are the things that my family was not. And so everything that I share with you, I really wish I had done. These are things I wish I had done differently, steps I wish I had taken. Possibly my son could have had a better chance at life, and my other 3 kids would not have struggled with certain issues that they struggled with. So it's definitely about planning ahead and talking with your family and educating your kids and educating yourself. Do what you plan and be consistent. Check up on your kids. You're going to ask questions. You're going to listen. You're going to monitor. You're just going to keep these conversations going. And I know we're all busy and it's hard, but it's necessary, especially in today's age. Act when necessary, support, guidance, and punishment. Just extremely important. So hopefully today you can take away something you don't know, and it can help you and your family. These are some of my favorite pictures of my family. My husband Carl is here, and my son Hayden, my other son Landon, and I have Miranda and Olivia. So Hayden is here in the middle, and Hayden is here on the end. And Hayden was just a bundle of joy. He was Mr. Personality. Everybody liked Hayden. He could walk in that room and just say something, and everybody would start laughing. Very, very lovable, likable kid. I was very close to him. As you can see in this picture, when I started to look back at the picture from my presentation, I started noticing the look on his face changed some. He became a different person. He began struggling between 8th and 9th grade. Kids today are starting to try substances 5th, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. So this is back in the early 2000s. And I grew up at Abilene Christian University. My husband and I were high school sweethearts. We met in high school. We went on day ski together. Grew up in the church. We were what I thought doing all the right things. I was raising my kids like my parents had raised me. Church, praying, kids in sports, activities, family vacations. We had all the cousins. We had the grandparents. Everyone was involved with my family and my kids. And I just assumed that everything was just going to be perfect, and life was going to just be amazing, and my kids were all going to go through school. They were going to be great at everything they tried. They were going to pick the best colleges. They were going to get into those colleges, and that's how life was going to be. What I didn't think about was the challenges that they're going to face, and I wasn't educated, and they weren't educated, and my husband and I together weren't educated, and as time went on, we really began to struggle. And then there's this stigma, and then there's this shame, especially we were here in Park Cities. We come from Austin, moved here. There's a lot of pressure to be all of that, to be the ones, to be up here with your status. And so it's hard a lot of times for families anywhere. I'm not going to just say just down here, obviously. But it is very difficult sometimes for families to ask for help. I think today it is getting better because there is a lot more in the news about it, which is a good thing. And so we don't ever want to shy away from that. If your family's having struggles, you got to deal with it, you got to talk about it, and make sure you get help and don't wait. Ignorance, silence, stigma, and shame impacted our family. Don't be too proud to ask for help. I think of drug education as like having insurance. Your family has coverage to help prevent, repair, or manage a crisis. When the house is burning, you can't go get insurance. When something is, you have a car wreck and you don't have, it's almost too late to get that. So having that knowledge, researching for yourself, and if you hear something on the news and you don't know what it is, find out what it is. Your kids might already know what it is. So it's important for you to know and educate yourself and talk about it with your kids and make sure they know what it is. Because if you don't, somebody else is going to handle something, and it could offer a lot of challenges to them and your family. Kids and teens can easily access drugs and alcohol. I was blown away. So when I lost my son Hayden in 2014 to heroin overdose, it was obviously the worst day of my life. And as time went on, I had time to reflect and think about everything he had told me when he was clean. He was clean for about 2 years, living in a treatment center, and then he moved into a halfway house. And during those times, they were probably some of the best 2 years for me to learn all that he had been through, and what he tried to explain to me what he was feeling. He tried to explain to me where he had gone for his drugs and just all these things that had happened. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is definitely a lot that he has shared with me. But we do know today that they can easily access drugs and alcohol. This graph is just 1 month, and this is the use here. We've got 8th, 10th, and 12th graders that were given a survey. And so the numbers can just be staggering, and this is a couple of years old. We know today that there's drugs pouring in, especially here in Texas. There's a lot more drugs that are pouring in, and a lot more that's available to our kids. I watch the news. Please pay attention to the news. If you hear something about drugs, tune in and pay attention to it. It is shocking that, yes, at our southern border, especially right now, there is so much coming in. And when you look at the cocaine numbers, cocaine actually has risen. It used to be heroin, it used to be methamphetamine, that was the higher numbers. And then the fentanyl, as we all know. I know you probably all know what fentanyl is, or you've heard about it, and that all kinds of things can be laced with fentanyl. And so you've got to do your homework, and your kids need to know what it is. They need to know what it is and what it's going to be in. So let's go back to e-cigarettes and vapes. My kids were those kids that my youngest daughter, Olivia, was in high school when the Juul boom hit. And I mean, the Juul boom just took off, and it was all over social media, and it was just everywhere. And my daughter Olivia got herself caught up in that as well, and I'll talk about her in a minute. But the use of e-cigarettes and vapes is unsafe for kids, teens, and adults. A lot of times kids don't realize, they think it's just, what's been advertised to them is that it's flavors and it's fruits and it's all natural and it's safe, and the tobacco's not there because it's not cigarettes. What a lot of times people don't realize is how much nicotine is in the e-cigarettes and the vapes. A lot, addictively a lot of nicotine. And these kids just had no idea. And they were all over the schools. It was like little pins that kids were showing up with, and all of these things that kids ended up getting. And we have a lot of kids that got hooked on nicotine. So highly addictive. And if you've got younger kids in your home, you've got to talk about this stuff before they see it, before they start trying it. Nicotine to the adolescent brain is extremely damaging. When heated, e-cigarettes and vapes contain other harmful substances besides nicotine. Young people who use e-cigs and vapes are more likely to smoke cigarettes later on. They're also more likely to try marijuana, anything that's being smoked. And as we know today, what has evolved is that marijuana can now be put into these e-cigarettes, into these vapes. And I go sometimes and I speak at a school at the DAEP, and I will sit with about 12 parents whose kids are there for various reasons. And the stories that they talk about how their kids show up and the bathrooms of the schools are flooded with the e-cigs or some other kind of substance. And this one lady said her daughter decided to take a couple of hits from someone who showed up with it at school, and her daughter just completely freaked out. So they think that something was laced in the marijuana that was in the vape. So there's just these challenges that we face, and I know that we've had Red Ribbon Week all these years. I'm not saying to get rid of it, but it's one of those things where it's been so focused on decorating doors and having contests, and it's so controversial to me because you're making it this fun week. Dress up, and we're going to have costumes, and we're going to have a T-shirt day, or whatever. And it's not about the drugs. It's not about really the awareness. It's more about celebrating. Just say no, but the kids don't know why they're saying no, and they really don't sometimes want to say no. And then sometimes they don't know how to say no. They don't have the tools they need to say no. So I encourage you to encourage your schools to put more in place. We need to have year-long programs in our schools to be educating our kids, as well as parents educating ourselves. So, so back to vaping, which today it is getting better, I think, but I do want to say this. So if you have a kid in your home who you realize is vaping, and you've been having those conversations, look, they're probably hooked on nicotine. They're going to need help to get off the vape. I work with my daughter, Olivia. She's a cognitive science major at UC Santa Cruz now. But she was one of those kids who got caught up in this whole Juul epidemic, and all of her friends, everybody had it. And she was upset that she let herself get into that kind of situation. When I began finding things, I began talking with her and just really trying to work with her. And she said, Mom, I'm afraid that now I'm hooked on nicotine. And I'm like, well, let's talk to the doctor, talk to the pharmacist. Don't feel like it's hopeless. It happened. You have to move forward. So I called my doctor, and he said, you can check with the pharmacist. So I went in and talked to a pharmacist. I took her with me, and I let her stand in front of the pharmacist and talk to the pharmacist, and the pharmacist was just amazing. She walked out, she said, let me talk with you. I understand these things happen. Gave her some patches, and she got off of nicotine, she got off of a vape. She doesn't vape today. So I'm just saying that maybe it was easier for me with all I had been through, and now I have this, to be like a different crisis. But I know that I've learned so much that you can't fall apart, you can't give up. You have to keep working with your kids, meet them where they're at, and take them from that and help them rise from the struggles that they are dealing with at the time. So substances kids and teens and young adults most commonly abuse. Legal drugs, you've got the prescriptions, such as Adderall. You've got that medication that, yes, they crush it, they snort it, it is addictive, it can be sold. And so Adderall is one of those legal, very, very much abused legal drug. Prescription pain medications, as we all know, the opioid crisis hit a lot of people hard, the painkillers. Cough medicine, Robitussin. My son began abusing that. That can be very addictive. The kids will just drink it. They'll mix it with a soda. So something to watch out for. Prescription depressants for anxiety, such as seizures, or Xanax. Xanax is one of the #1 most addictive prescription medications, and it is so hard on the brain. And I'm going to tell you in a minute, when I take you through Hayden's timeline of his use, something that was just mind-boggling to me, because when he was abusing Xanax and got a felony because of it on school campus, somebody in my family was getting prescriptions for it. But we'll talk about that in just a minute. Salvia, which is an herb that is smoked and you chew the leaves. We have steroids for anemia injections that can be used, and of course alcohol and tobacco. If you don't know what synthetic drugs are, designer drugs, really need you to educate yourself on that as well and your kids. When I first came across packages that looked similar to this, I didn't know what they were. One of the packages had Scooby-Doo on it, and it said Scooby Snacks. And I remember asking my son, and he just said it was candy. I'm like, oh, okay, so I just believed it. So synthetic designer drugs are just as harmful as the drugs that you could get on the street. The kids think because they're synthetic, they're designer, they're these packages that they're not going to be as damaging, but they are. They can even be more damaging in some cases. So you have the K2 and the spice, which is like a type of marijuana. Bath salts, which resemble an LSD. Molly and psych drugs. You've got cocaine, called plant food. There's crocodile, a derivative of codeine. You've got N-bomb, the psychedelics, and then there's fentanyl and ketamine, which is opioids. And these can be found at head shops and vape shops, sometimes convenience stores, and the reason the kids can get them is because they're a different name. They call them bath salts, or they call them a package of spice. And so the kids will go and get these, and they can be abused just like drugs, and they are still just as harmful as drugs. Then we have the illegal street drugs. Marijuana, it's still illegal in many states, even though there was about 15, 16 states that are now legalizing marijuana, which just adds another challenge to us as parents to help our kids understand that just because something is legal, it doesn't mean it's okay for you. It doesn't mean it's okay for me. It doesn't mean it's okay for our family. So many people react differently on these drugs, and marijuana is one of those that people want to say it's not a gateway drug and it's not addictive. I beg to differ. Every time I would go sit in a treatment center, to support my son, and we would be in a room full of 50 people, most of those people that were there struggling had all started with marijuana. Marijuana was one of the ones, and then they would say, then I went into cocaine, or then I went into heroin, or then I went in, it was always the marijuana. And so how do we think there's anything good about marijuana? Okay, well maybe prescription, maybe prescription marijuana. I'm not going to just completely shoot it all down. But I do know it's challenging for our kids to hear that it's legal, and then they can get it in another state. But they also don't realize that you still have to be 21. And so kids will go and get marijuana maybe in another state, but you still have to be 21 no matter what state you're in, even though it's legal. So it is challenging, but again, those conversations need to continue. We need to keep educating ourselves and educating our kids. Drug paraphernalia, if you find items in your home, a lot of things begin showing up in my home that I really wasn't processing it. With my son being in 9th grade, and I was finding a lot of these little button bags. They're button bags, basically. You get a new pair of pants, you've got an extra button. And I was finding a lot of these around his room, and not really processing that he was bringing home some drugs in them. So button bags were something that we watch out for. The white paper, definitely, they can roll marijuana in that, they can roll other drugs in that, and smoke that. So watching out for white papers, watching out for lighters that continue to pop up. Eye drops. A lot of times, if you've got a kid who you kind of keep finding eye drops in the car, eye drops in the closet, maybe eye drops in the pants, they're trying to hide their red eyes. And so that's just something that, that they're going to do just because they don't want you to see them like they are if they've been smoking something. Spoons. My spoons began missing out of my cabinet, out of my drawer. Where are my spoons going? I was like, this is strange. Well, over time, when I began straightening up my son's room and doing all these things, I began finding spoons. And this was later in his use. This is as his use progressed. Because you start using spoons as a melting pot to melt the drugs. You can take a lighter and put it under the spoon, and now you can melt the product that you have if you want to either either melted to inject it or smoke it. So I began missing spoons, began finding in my son's room. The foil, my foil, I would go buy a foil, keep buying the foil while my son's using it, because you need foil also you can use for a melting pot. You can do things with foil. And then, unfortunately, eventually finding the needles in his room, which at that point, we knew he was pretty sick and the heroin had begun. And so these were just things to watch out for. These, bombs, they're very pretty. They look, they're going to smoke those. They're going to smoke things in those. And that's always just something to watch out for. So, again, my son, I wanted to kind of just give you an idea of my son's timeline of use. He began around 13 years of age with alcohol. And at the time, we didn't have alcohol in our home per se. I had it at the top of my cabinet, way in the back if I was going to make a cake, but we just didn't have alcohol out on the counter. So when I would talk to my son when he was clean, and I'd say, well, when you started using, where'd you get your stuff? Where'd you go? And definitely, there's open bars at homes. It's just, sitting out. And there's the big parties that happen on the weekends, and there's the liquor cabinet, and then there's a refrigerator, and he could go to his friend's house. So I want to encourage you, if you have kids in your home, maybe it won't be your kids that's going to have any issue with it, but it could be their friends. Like a lot of my son's friends went on to just live their life, and when they did a lot of the stuff that Hayden did, Hayden couldn't handle it. So just locking up your liquor, don't just leaving it available for kids to get their hands on. Marijuana, he was 14, he was with a friend, and just happened to be with a friend who was smoking marijuana. Hayden began smoking marijuana. Hayden told me that at that point, when he started smoking marijuana, he didn't even think about alcohol. Because in order to get that feeling that he was looking for at the time, when he began smoking marijuana, I realized he could get that feeling where he was kind of a high-strung kid, kind of a little bit of anxiety going on with him, maybe some mental health as well that we didn't even think about. For marijuana, he could just get this cool low that he was looking for. And he would say, I didn't even want to drink alcohol because I had to drink so much to get that depressing feeling, that calm feeling that I was looking for. So he's the kind of kid who, when he smoked his first couple of joints, he wanted to keep that feeling coming. And so that was kind of the thing that started taking him on this journey that he began going on. He did also experiment with those synthetic designer drugs that I was talking about earlier. We began buying those in the house. Prescription medications, the opioids, the painkillers, he began trying that. But what happens is a lot of times we as parents or other parents have medication. When they're done with it, it's still sitting on the kitchen counter. It's still sitting on the nightstand. Maybe it's left in the car. And so these kids are going to get that. They're going to try them if they're curious, if they have that kind of mannerism about them. And if it's not your kids, again, it can be your friend's kids, somebody else's kid that might be interested in trying those. So disposing of your pain medication, getting rid of medication that we don't need anymore, maybe it can save a life, honestly. Cough syrup, I was going to say, so this is Xanax. So Hayden, we're going to talk about the legal part of this later on too, but when Hayden went to, so we were in Highland Park, Hayden was struggling so much, and we decided to send him to a counselor. The counselor suggested that he go to a boot camp. Went to the boot camp, and then he said, well, you can't bring him back home because all the problems are down here, you need to move. Well, within 2 months, we listed our house, and we moved to Fairview. So, there we go. Now we're going to move to the country. There's no drugs out here. We're going to be safe. It's a great school district, Lovejoy Middle School District. It's going to be fantastic. He'll come home, he'll be fine, everything will be fine. And when Hayden comes home, he's pretty depressed. Because he's been in boot camp for 2 months. He comes home, and we're not even home anymore. Now we've moved, so we didn't tell him. 2 months into being a Lovejoy, some kid has Xanax and brings it on school campus. Hayden is in kind of a relapse mode. Hayden has Xanax in his pocket, drug dogs show up, and our son has his first felony on school campus. And he was 18 or 17 years old. So my mother at the same time was struggling with, my dad had a heart attack, and when my son is getting a felony on a controlled substance, my mother's doctor continues to give her Xanax, And I highly recommend if anybody in here is on Xanax, get off of it. Work with your doctor. Get on something else. Your brain will suffer on Xanax. I saw my mother completely not become my mother. So I just want to really focus on the Xanax because a lot of people can get hooked on that. And it's a very challenging medication. So cough syrup he definitely abused, and then pet anxiety medication. So what you see here is just when kids begin using at such a young age, there begins to be a desperation. And for Hayden, as the years begin to pass and he was using things, and yes, he was getting in trouble and we were taking his car and all these things were going on within our household. At some point I was looking for my dog's medication because my dog could not be near a football game without going ballistic. So I had a big bottle of pet anxiety medication for my dog, about 15 pills probably in the cabinet. And I found the empty bottle under my son's bed. And I knew at that moment that he had taken her medication because he was wanting something, and he knew that that was for whatever he was feeling, that anxiety. And I talked to him about it. Of course, he denied it. But the point is you'd be surprised what kids will take and can get their hands on. So don't be naive about anything in your own home or in somebody else's home. And then eventually heroin, at age 19, that's when we began finding the needles. Hayden was on heroin and he was pretty much a disaster, and then we eventually lost him at 22 years old. So what I did is I made a video. This is a short video. I had my daughter Miranda put the video together for me. I wrote the monologue, and I used to just read it, but I wanted it to be more. And this is basically just kind of a quick story of how things unfolded in my home. And so let's have you watch this.
I complicate people's lives, and I've been associated with many traits such as silent, very misunderstood, life of the party, ignored, isolated, denied, legal, illegal, a prisoner, a bad person, addict, a facility resident, and some people call me choice. I seem to be everywhere and living in many homes as I show up in different disguises. I have ruined or taken many lives through many accessible devices. Families have been torn apart because of me, and I just wish people would take the time to understand me, be able to quickly recognize me, know how to treat me, but plan to never be me. I am addiction disease. I partner with chemicals, usually meeting people of all ages because we are so available and careless. Many do not recognize us even though we sit in homes where everyone can see us and touch us in open bars, cabinets, and countertops. There is an age limit for who can use us, but many times this is ignored. These devices, which can attack our alcohol and prescription medications. Other legal devices include packaged designer synthetic drugs under different names, cigarettes, vapes, and yes, in some places, marijuana. I partner with alcohol and drugs which are always available and easy to access. We seem to hang out with such young kids because time and time again, kids and teens get their hands on us. Sometimes adults seem to look the other way with no care in the world. You should see the impact I have on young brains because I am addiction disease. Life with my illegal counterparts seems to be trickier, but still very possible to live or die with many people. People will risk their life to get to be with us. Some of my illegal devices are marijuana, methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine, LSD, and PCP, just to name a few. One of my young victims was Hayden, and wow, does his family love him. He was a great kid and never caused his parents any trouble until 9th grade. We met through alcohol, which he got from an open bar at his friend's house, and then we met again through marijuana, which a kid was selling at school. Hayden had no idea who I was, but I realized I had changed his life forever because I met his DNA and genetic coding. I am addiction disease. From that day forward, Hayden worked to keep our relationship a secret and used many of my devices. I was with him all the time, but no one noticed me for several years. During these first 3 years, no matter how much punishment Hayden received, he did not realize how toxic I was. Here's a list of clues that were often left in Hayden's room and car that should have identified me, but time and time again, I was not recognized. His family was ignorant and then later in denial. They did not understand that addiction disease, was present in their home. Many warning signs should have alerted them that I was with Hayden. Small clear button bags, eye drop bottles, thin square paper sheets, lighters, unlabeled medicine bottles, strange smells, empty alcohol bottles, cough syrup bottles, marijuana, synthetic drug packages, stealing, failing school, class smoking bombs, secretive, attitude change, lack of motivation, lying, personality change, disobeying rules, no focus, calls from the police, change in sleeping habits, risk-taking, and new unknown friends and isolation. No one had any idea that I was the reason for Hayden's dramatic changes. We were sick, not bad. As those years passed, addiction disease, robbed Hayden of healthy brain development and furthered his mental health issues. He could not function using my devices in his life and became angry and ashamed. Hayden had no self-awareness. After a few years, Hayden's family sent us to a boot camp, believing Hayden would come back a better person. We were still sick, not bad. Upon return, Hayden and I relapsed, received a felony for pocketing a Xanax at school, and found ourselves in jail a few times. Hayden thought he was in control of our relationship, but I knew better because we barely made it out of high school and lived isolated behind closed doors for many days. He was depressed, seemed to get anxious, and did not understand his personality disorder. He pretended to be all right, but could not stop thinking about my devices, which he craved. Hayden's family began to live with my partner's stigma, which kept their family quiet and in turmoil. As time passed, Hayden was introduced to a few more of my devices: synthetic drug bath salts and heroin. His life became a disaster. His family finally understood how awful I am and began to know me as addiction disease. Hayden never really understood who I am and hated announcing that I was with him. Hayden, addict. After we spent 2 years in recovery, stayed away from all devices, living in a treatment facility, then halfway house, we moved to our own apartment. Hayden got a job and was trying college, but I could tell he was having a hard time dealing with life, and I suggested he use heroin again. He kept me a secret, did not let anyone know what he was hearing, and was not using tools to stay clean or a mentor he could get support from. In 2014, I took Hayden's life when he overdosed on heroin. His parents were devastated and heartbroken when they found us. His family was filled with grief, knew they must warn their families about me, help others understand addiction, and be prepared to recognize me quickly. Find all the information you can about me and talk about who I really am. I do like my new name, substance use disorder, because I believe more people will discuss me and let go of my stigma and shame. Someday, I hope a cure is found to help those that suffer with me to have a better chance at life. I am addiction disease.
We were completely ignorant and unprepared for what was to come, for the darkness that would overtake our son Hayden. We were challenged beyond normal physical, emotional, and mental boundaries. Every day became a battle, and it felt like times we were at war with a strategic enemy. We were forced to learn the hard way, but we began to understand there are many families like us longing for their son or daughter that they once knew to return to them. All of us wanted answers and constantly asked why. But we were left with endless uncertainty. The battle against the disease of addiction and its impacts on the family forever scars the heart. So when you have one kid or someone in your home that is struggling with substance use disorder or with mental health, and you have other people in your home, such for my case, it was my son Hayden. He had 3 young siblings behind him. I regret deeply that we made it a Hayden problem, and it was almost as if we were isolated Hayden because he's having all these issues at school. He can't get through school. We keep finding all these drugs, and I didn't want the kids to know, his other 3 siblings to know, what Big Brother is doing. Because in my head, if they know what's going on, then they're going to want to do that. They're going to want to use. They're going to want to try what he's doing. And what I've come to understand now after thinking back so much and talking to my own kids and talking to other families is we totally should have been doing the opposite. We should have all been sitting down together at the table, talking about what is Hayden using and finding out why is Hayden using this. What is making him feel like he needs to use this. I needed to be educating my other 3 kids about drugs, about legal issues, about what's happening. Why is Hayden in jail, and why am I doing this, and why am I doing that? But instead, I was afraid to say anything. Eventually, of course, as you can imagine, Hayden got so bad that as a family we did begin talking more, but it wasn't as if we were all coming together. It was just still very, very one-on-one. And I'm telling you, my kids struggle with the fact that they felt like they enabled their brother. My daughter Miranda was really, really close to her brother Hayden. She was my third child. And he would ask her for money, and she would give it to him. Birthday money, her own birthday money, and not say anything. And so my kids experienced things that they should not have experienced because of the silence in my home about what was going on. My son Landon ended up struggling with his own sense of identity, and that he needed to be doing more than being the nerd kid at home, building electronics. And so I'll talk about him in a little bit, but the point is that we can't just isolate the person that's struggling. We have to talk about it together as a family. Everyone needs to be on the same page and working together to support that person. So kids and teens definitely are accessing drugs and alcohol, and how. Social media, I'm sure maybe a lot of you heard that Snapchat is the #1 way that kids communicate about drugs. There's a meetup session. There's a way to buy and sell and get a delivery. All these things are going on a lot with social media. You need to educate yourself, and you need to, if you're paying for your kid's phone, it's your house, if you own that car, all these things are your property. You should have every right to be looking at the phone, get rid of those passwords or know the passwords. It just helps, there's accountability here. And also we're going to talk about drug testing, because these kids need a way to say no. They need an out. They need a way to deal with what's going on with them. So social media is #1. Students at school. I don't care if it's public or if it's private. Yes, it's a Christian atmosphere in private school. There is still plenty of kids struggling. And a lot of times kids are struggling with drug use because they have a mental health disorder. A lot of times people ask me, well, what do you think comes first? And it can be either or. The kids might not have any issues, but marijuana and drugs can cause mental health issues. Or if a kid, like my son, is feeling anxious and he doesn't feel quite right, he might start using. It can go either way. We just have to be aware of it and watch for it and not be afraid to get help when we need it for our kids and ourselves. There's drug dealers everywhere. I mean, my son would say, I can go down a couple of blocks over into Allen and buy what I needed. You can go to Highland Park, buy what you need. You can cross over 75 and get what you need. So drugs are everywhere. Smoke shops, head shops, the vape stores, they have the synthetic drugs we talked about. There's the open bars and the refrigerated alcohol, medicine cabinets. There's online pharmacies that kids can sign up for, and the dark web. If you don't know what the dark web is, get yourself familiar with the dark web, because that's bought and sold, and the kids know how to set those accounts up. They definitely can get their drugs there. I read a story a couple of years ago, a true story, and it was about this little smiley face sticker. And it was a senior year for a kid, and his family, he was just a great kid. He was already accepted into going to college. Prom night comes up, and there's the big hotel room that's been reserved and all that, and these kids are having a great time. Someone showed up to this party that they weren't completely familiar with, but they're all hanging out and probably doing some drinking. And this person began passing out these little smiley face stickers, and the kids were popping them in their mouth. Well, this boy that the story's part of one of the chapters is based on, he completely just was freaked out. The psychedelic was so impactful to him that he went running through the hotel room and eventually jumped off of the balcony. And his parents had a couple of hours to see him before he passed. And it happened that fast. It happened that fast. So, again, these are sticker sheets. They look like sticker sheets, and the kids can pass these out. So familiarize yourself with these and show them to your kids. Discuss these kind of things with your family. Also, grandparents. You know, we're talking about parents. We've got grandparents, aunts and uncle. If your kids are spending a lot of time at the grandparents' house or at someone else's house, those conversations need to come up with those people where your kids are spending a lot of time with at their home. So that's, you know, my parents never even imagined anything like this would happen to their grandson. My sister and I did not cause any trouble at all. And here we have a kid who's really, really struggling. And reasons kids and teens begin to abuse substances. Uneducated is a silent topic. They just happen to be in the moment and try something. Lack of discussion. Ignorant of consequences. They don't really understand what's going to happen to them. And a lot of times when something happens to our kids, we have no idea that this could be a legal charge and what the extent of legal charge is going to be and how expensive it's going to be. So they need to understand what the consequences are if they get caught with alcohol or marijuana or somebody else's prescription, especially if it's on campus. Legal charges on campus. They can get it from friends, peers, peer pressure. And escape stress, anxiety, depression. Sometimes they're just curious. Social media influence, isolation, no activities. Kids need to stay busy. They need to have something to do. It doesn't have to be sports. It doesn't have to be, but let them find some art, music, dancing, whatever it is. Help them find an activity to keep them busy. So isolation and no activities. Easy to get alcohol and drugs. They're bored. They need to feel excited. And substance use disorder and addiction is usually what unfolds as time goes on. We must work together to prevent kids and teens from substance use and substance abuse while recognizing substance use disorder. The thing about substance use disorder is I celebrate those people today. It is so hard for people to stay clean once they've been struggling with drugs. So don't shy away from those people. Give them a high five. Tell them how fantastic it is. Whether it's one day or it's 20 years, someone in recovery has been through some stuff. We should be able to even let our kids talk with those that are in recovery. You know, they need to hear from people who have struggled, who've been there. If you have a kid who is struggling, they need a mentor or they need someone else to talk to, then get them that help. Kids and teens find ways to hide drugs and drug paraphernalia. I almost became addicted to finding what my son is using. I was crawling on my hands and knees. I was digging in the cabinet. I was constantly looking for answers. Under the mattress or bed, above a cabinet, tissue box, desk drawers, light fixtures, books, behind walls and pictures, old backpacks, closets and shelves. The car is like a driving warehouse for some kids. You'd be surprised if you start looking around the car. A lot of the things that you can find are in the car. They're in the glove compartment, they're in the eyeglass holder, they're under the carpet. We lift the carpet up. So a lot of times the car can be like a driving warehouse for kids. They make clothes today that can hide drugs within the pockets. Pockets of jackets, inner lining. So just there's so many places, and you just have to be on guard, and you have to set rules in your home and start those rules young, so that it's not so difficult again when the crisis is happening. When your kids are young, these are the things that are going to occur in this house, and it's because we want to give you a way to be safe, we want to give you an out, to not have to use drugs, and just really, really have a plan for your family. Education discussion is prevention. for many and life-saving for others. Let your kids know you know, so they know they can have a reason to say no. Talk together as a family and make a plan. You're going to see a lot of words up here: discuss, listen, discuss, talk, share. There's just so much of that needs to be done. So I really highly recommend you to do that. I don't think I need to read all of this information, but again, in order to give your kids a way to not be the nerd, not be the one that's not, liked by other people or whatever, help them plan, have an out, especially when they get to high school. It gets challenging. I'm all for drug testing. I'm a huge advocate for drug testing. Get comfortable with drug testing, use them. This is a prevention tool, and it's also a tool that can help find if someone is struggling with substance use disorder, because if they can't keep a clean drug test, you're going to know there's a problem. You don't want to wait to get help. So parents, drug use early and intervene. Support school drug testing as well. And get them involved with school activities and help them have an excuse to leave the situation. Just make a plan before they go somewhere. And yes, there's going to be parties and it's going to end up at somebody's house or something's going on. Help them plan. Have a way that they can contact you if they need to get out of there, especially if they understand the legal consequences. They're going to be more prone to be thinking about, wow, there's a lot of marijuana here, and I know that legal consequence is this. So I'm just going to quickly make a phone call, or give them a way to have a way to get out if they need to. Have them talk about how they fake being sick to get out of there. The parents are checking up on me. I have a big test tomorrow, so I got to stay focused. Fake a phone call to get out of a situation they might be in. They can call you for a ride home, and then just talk about people that are getting in trouble and that they're somewhat risky to be with. So just all of this conversation is healthy to have with your kids. Kids want to fit in, so be creative and help them plan their way to avoid trying and using. Again, get comfortable with drug testing. You can go and buy these anywhere. I've had a mom who her oldest was starting to struggle with some substance use. She was in this DAEP. She had 4 other kids behind this one. And I talked to her about drug testing. I said, how old are the other ones? Well, they're pretty young. And I said, well, everybody gets their own drug testing box. And you just line them up on the cabinet. And we're going to understand what's going on with Big Brother and how, that's why Big Brother is in JP. And here's So let's all have a reason to not use and to have it out. If you, and just make it a part of your family plan. Make it feel normal. Drug testing is normal because not only can it help, again, find out if someone's struggling, but it can be used as a prevention tool in a way that the kids can say, I can't use or I can't drink because I'm being tested. You can buy big tests. Up to 14 drugs can be found on these. Educate kids and anyone living in your home about the drug test. Allow drug testing to be part of your family. And then again, support drug testing at school. Let the schools drug test your kids. That's just another way somebody can help you. They can help you. And I know it's tricky because if they get caught at school, there's these things, but if you're getting drug testing, you're going to really rule out kids who are going to use because they know they're going to get caught.
Susan, may I say something? Yeah. Another thing that you may not know about CARE is that we have free drug tests in our office, and all you have to do is call us, and we will provide it for you.
Great. That's great. We did learn the hard way about the legal consequences. So if you aren't familiar with what happens if a kid gets caught with marijuana or with alcohol or speeding or whatever, please educate yourself. Also, just on school campus, there's a sign out front, and you need to make your kids aware of that. Look, it says no drugs, no guns. Let's talk about that sign that's outside. That a lot of times people don't even think about it, but it's there. So drug offense, legal charges can occur on school campus or off. My family learned this the hard way and spent thousands of dollars and hours in court. When my son Hayden got caught with the Xanax, they just hauled him off to jail and then called me and let me know he was gone and where he's going. I was just beside myself. I've never dealt with anything like this. None of my family ever been in jail. Nothing like that. And so my husband and I began getting a lawyer, and we went and picked him up, and we had all the court dates, and there was the time away from work. And we spent about $17,000 on his first legal charge. When I go talk to kids at school, I talk about this, how expensive it is for their parents. What does it mean for mom and dad? What does it mean for your siblings? You know, when they make a stupid mistake or they do something, it's not just their problem. It becomes a family problem. And so they need to learn about this. It'll put a little place in their mind to think about, oh, I probably shouldn't do that because I'm going to get a charge. I'm not saying we're going to save everybody, but I think we're going to make some big changes if these kids understand the legal charges that can happen to them. Discuss being arrested and charges can occur as minor and adults. They can be charged as an adult at 17 years of age, like my son Landon. Drug dogs are brought into the middle school and high school campus and can identify controlled substances and other drugs. Help your kids know what an MIP is, DWI, DUI, drug charge, unlawful possession, under the influence, what's a fake ID charge. And if you like, you can still get a charge if you're just holding for a friend. And that's the best. This is my friends, I'm keeping it for my friends. I don't know how many times, I heard that. Oh, that's not mine. Well, if it's in your car, it's theirs. They need to understand that. Jail time, state prison, hours, months, and years. Probation can be up to 6 months to 3 years, depending on the crime. There's community service hours or keeping up with school. It's very costly for your family. The probation officer, now if your kid loses their car, then you have to drive them to the probation office. And so that's usually sometimes every week or every other week. They can lose their license and privileges and ability to travel. My son Landon he is a great kid. And he felt inclined to start going out to some parties and hanging out with kids. Did some drinking, and he also was the kind of kid that wanted to take care of other kids. So he wanted to make sure he was the one getting everybody home. And he was going down 75 after an adult had brought alcohol to a party. And he was speeding, and the lights went on behind him. He was going to be stopped. There was a little bit of marijuana in the car. He'd been drinking, and he panicked, and he floored the car. And now he's just, driving so fast and he's evading arrest, and that's what he gets a felony for, evading arrest, because he was running from the police. And, my goodness, it was just crazy because once these kids get charged, they have no room for error after that. Now you've got a probation officer. Literally no room for error. Well, a few more things happened, and the judge knew these things had happened. And instead of letting me and my husband send our son Landon off we had it all figured out. We had this school he was going to go to because he said, get me out of here, just give me some help. I want to finish my daughter. The judge didn't want to do that. And so right after Landon's senior year, he got to go spend 10 months in state prison. And he hopped around Texas, from prison to prison to prison, and shocking. Devastating. And, he is doing fine today, but he struggled a long time with that. And, he learned. He never did anything else. So, he did learn. He just learned a really hard way. So again, we have not talked about anything like that. We have not talked about charges. We have not talked about what does it mean. So please do that. Please, I don't care how old your kids are, just talk about it. How young they are, start talking about it. You can't just assume. Other health information to know. Let's see. It's almost out of time. Let me play with the rest of this. So what is substance use disorder addiction? Substance use disorder is a complex condition in which there is uncontrolled use of a substance despite harmful consequences. People with substance use disorder have an intense focus on using a certain substance such as alcohol, tobacco, illicit drugs, point to where the person's ability to function day-to-day life becomes impaired. People keep using the substance even when they know it's going to cause or will cause problems. Substance use disorder is a brain disease disorder which can happen at a young age. After I lost my son, I did not understand what it meant to overdose. I began doing research. I just had to understand what happened to him. And so I think people need to know. I think your kids need to know if a lot of a substance is taken, what happens to you. When you hear the word overdose, you need to educate your kids. And so people can overdose on alcohol, Tylenol, opioids, or a mixture of drugs. Opioid overdose, I'm not going to go there. Basically, your brain is not telling your body to breathe. It's like suffocating. You've used a lot of drugs, and a lot of times somebody that relapses, their muscle memory or their memory is that they can use this big dose of heroin or painkillers. They're going to take a bunch of painkillers. And obviously they pass out, and then you forget you don't breathe. Your kids need to know that. It's like suffocating when you take a lot of a drug. Cocaine is different. It's more of a heart thing. It causes your heart to race. And so the kids need to understand with cocaine, it's a different kind of impact to your body than opioids would be. If you're not familiar with Narcan or naloxone, this was not around, well, it wasn't being talked about when my son was struggling. This is a life-saving, it's a reversal. Has anybody heard of Narcan or naloxone? Okay. So this is now sold like at CVS, it can be ordered. If you have someone in your home, or if you know someone who has someone in their home who's struggling, they need to have this in their purse, they need to have it in their cabinet, they need to have it in their car. If someone is struggling with opioids and you find them passed out, and they'll familiarize yourself with signs, and there's some foaming at the mouth, or there's this, if you know they're struggling, this can save them within, I think, the first 15 minutes if they are found. This can reverse that. So many people are being saved with this. Police are carrying it. Emergency EMS. A lot of people are using this now to save lives. So have it on hand. If your kid ever starts to struggle, if your spouse starts to struggle with, have this on hand. It's for opioids. It's not like cocaine, but it's a life-saving drug that, I wish I could have had that. I wish I could have used that on my son and given him a chance. So. Knowledge is power, information is liberating. Education is the premise of progress in every society and every family. I just love that quote, so I wanted to put it on here because it is so true. If we're not educated, then we can't make educated decisions. We can't do educated things. We stumble along, and so that's what happens when kids start using drugs. They're not educated, they're going to stumble along and possibly stumble on the wrong things that take their life. So I have a program, it's called IMAP, and I'm working to get it in schools. I've got a couple of schools that have used it. McKinney's used it, Lovejoy's used it. Right now, Bullseye ISD is using it. It's a year-long program. It is a program that I use a lot of slides, a lot of information, but it's very short lessons, but it's talked about all year long. It's not just 1 week, because 1 week and everybody goes back to their life or whatever. And I believe we just, with our schools, with our families, we need to talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. So I also have a subscription for families to use. It's like $10 a month, and you can go online, you can sign up for it if you want to use it. Enterprises can use it. I said school districts are using it. And IMAP bridges conversations about drug use and abuse between kids, parents, and educators with the purpose of planning for a drug-free future while understanding substance use disorder. It's one thing to educate our kids and help them stay away from drugs, but we must educate them on what is substance use disorder. Maybe they won't struggle, but it could be their friend. If they are informed, and if you're informed, you can help someone else. They can help a friend. They can encourage a friend. So it's a way that we can all work together to help each other for sure. So addictionimpacts.com, if you just want to take a look at it, please do. I'm going to show you that video. I had a video, but we're going to just bypass that. Know your kids' friends and their parents. Agree to communicate and allow current concerns to be shared. Be willing to discuss troubling situations. If you see something, say something. Reach out for help. Remove stigmas from mental health and substance use disorder. Again, knock on that person's door. Hi, I'm so-and-so's mom, I'm so-and-so's dad. A lot of that was not going on at the time with my son. He was making new friends, we were fairly new, and off he would go to somebody's house, and I never, really met the parent, and met the just make it a habit to get to know that. I did that as time went on, I did learn. That's the good news, is as time went on, with my second, my third, by the time Olivia came around, other than this little jewel thing, I mean, we had it down, you know, and I knew immediately, and I was talking to her about substances, and we just, to this day, she and I talk so much, and she'll call me about something, and I'll show her pictures and stuff, and she said, man, if you had not talked to me about all this stuff, I guarantee you I probably would have used some of it. She said, Mom, it's everywhere. There's kids out there using it. So I know starting educating her young, it's just been a benefit to that for sure. More information about me, these are my websites. I write blogs and articles under my blogs. I've got videos. I don't know if you know about Jan and Robin with Reading in Recovery. I have an interview on there, and I talk about this stuff as well. I am delighted to be here. Thank you so much for coming today, and I hope to see you around. And again, just look me up online. Thank you.